And so I would say that in the case of, to show contingency in the history of life, which you do convincingly and repeatedly, still to my mind leaves open the question as to whether it's just blind chance or whether there's anything more at work.
Well, it's not just blind chance. The question is at what level predictability enters. I think there are broad-scale predictabilities. I will grant you bilateral symmetry in moving organisms. I'll grant you predator-prey ratios in functioning ecosystems. What I won't give you is the inevitability of Homo sapiens rather than some other lineage, or insects rather than opibiniids, which died, or trilobites rather than anomalocarids, which didn't make it. It is in all the details of particular lineages that contingency rules. Now, that wouldn't be a problem if we could just say, well, I don't care about the details. Science, after all, is fundamentally the search for the generalities. Sure, the details are contingent, but they're below our notice. They're not below our notice for one fundamental historical, sociological, and psychological fact, and that is man is the measure of all things. We happen to be enormously interested in ourselves, no matter how general we make our theories. They are in some fundamental sense about ourselves, and ourselves are Homo sapiens, one of those little contingent twigs. So we can't claim we're only interested in the generality. We want them to relate to us, and we happen to be in the domain of contingency.
I should have no difficulty agreeing that, say, human consciousness is, in some regards, the amplification of events that were ultimately just contingent, just random. Not only that, but every thought we think probably has a contingent seed or many contingent seeds in its own development in our own brains. That I chose exactly these words rather than some other form of words probably depends on random or pseudo-random or arbitrary or contingent states of some part of my brain. But once that process of, say, designing this very utterance begins to get rolling, then all sorts of regularities are imposed on that, because what comes out is roughly a grammatical sentence of English, never, ever a sentence of Chinese, and not usually total gibberish.
But you see, one of the criticisms of your contingency view is that some people would see the working of providence as being some guiding principle in evolution which doesn't have to have a plan made up in advance, doesn't have to be designing human beings. Maybe it works rather like we do, responding to new circumstances with choices and decisions and movements in one direction rather than another.
There's an obvious response to that, Rupert, which, although conventional, I think is correct operationally in this case, and that is, if in principle one can always, for any sequence, no matter how peculiar with respect to any expectations of regularity, if we can always say, but maybe it is the workings of preordained plans being so complex that we can't possibly discern their directionality, for in the old line, God works in many ways, his wonders to perform. At that point, it's not a useful hypothesis, because one will say, no matter what the pattern is, maybe it is a preordained plan we don't know about, to which I have to say, yes, maybe it is, but since formally we'll never know, I can't work with that, and I have to therefore work without it. It is nothing that science could ever adjudicate. For example, and I think this was in fact a fine solution, Pius XII is not one of my heroes for other reasons, decreed in an encyclical in the 1930s that that Catholics were free to believe anything science discovered about the evolution of the human corporeal form, so long as they continued to accept that at some point God infused the soul into this sequence. I'm totally comfortable with that notion. I can't deal with souls. I don't know what they are. They're nothing we could ever know about, whether they're there or not. I'm entirely comfortable for that. In my own personal theology, there is no such concept, but it doesn't threaten anything I can do in science if some people accept that directive. The issue that we're concerned with as scientists is what we can say about the evolution of human corporeal form, and many other things indeed. Now that just becomes a subsidiary hypothesis, comforting and coherent for some and perfectly fine.